All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming by. Chris Petrie here. We're just going to have a great time. We're going to have a lot of fun going through the step-by-step process to get this beautiful composition done of a street scene. We have gorgeous features here. We have some figures, some very simplified figures. We have some great cafe awnings with gorgeous dark shadows underneath. We have some Juliet windows and doors up top with some great shadowing as well. So we're really concentrating here on two things mostly, which would be composition, getting a really good solid composition, which we did a preliminary sketch like this first with some magic marker just to get an idea of what we're doing. And then we took this and we transposed it right over onto our watercolor paper, and then we got started with our drawings. So you're going to kind of learn how to start out with a preliminary sketch first. Get your ideas on the paper, a simple printer paper. Second, once you're done with that, you put that down onto your watercolor paper, and then you're all set. You're ready to paint, and you already have all your information that you need. You have all of your design layout, you have your light and shadows, and then all you have to do is just work out your colors when you're working in your palette, and we'll show you exactly how to do that too, to mix some really beautiful colors. Here we use a nice, beautiful, warm, sunny feel of some golden, warm browns and oranges and yellows for the golden color of maybe sunrise or sunset. And then again, we just did a really nice job to crisp up the painting by using some really nice figures with some really good skin tones and some really cool colors for the clothing. Let's get started, and glad you stopped by. We're going to have a lot of fun. Let's get started. All right, we just saw the finished painting, and we're just going to get started, do a little bit of composition work prior to our starting the drawing and painting. The main thing I wanted to notice here, we are going to work this one just, I'm kind of creating this from my imagination, so I'm not really working from a photograph or a picture or anything like that. Sometimes it's good to do that, or sometimes you can have reference photos. So you work the way you feel comfortable. Many times I'll work from books, photographs, internet pictures, plein air. I'll set up things in front of me in my studio. I'll set up still lifes, flowers, fruit, coffee mugs, all kinds of interesting things like that. So it's fun to just kind of try to create your paintings, I guess, from all different types of situational setups. You know, again, plein air, maybe out in the backyard or in a park, you might do some flowers or a scene. Then you might set some stuff up in your studio, maybe set up some flowers, some fruit, paintbrush, you know, maybe like a watercolor brush, a coffee cup or a teacup or something like that. Do some of that, work from photographs, you know, use your electronic devices, your phone, iPads, work from your home computer screens. If you have a little larger screens, you know, you can work from TVs even if you want. If you have a panel TV, you know, you can work from pretty much anything. You know, you're the artist, you're going to figure out all the different you know, options you have as far as when you're creating your artwork and what your subject matter is and how you're going to incorporate that into your compositions, your paintings, your practice work. Basically, everything's really practice in a sense. Like when you're painting as an artist, everything you could just always think of it as like everything is sort of like practice. You're just always working on your work, your paintings, your drawings, and you're just getting better and better all the time, just a little bit at a time. Nothing is just going to skyrocket. You know, your skill as an artist is not going to skyrocket overnight. Like in 1 year, you're not going to become like incredibly, you know, masterful at your paintings in just 1 year. It takes, you know, time. But the real basic of it is the more time you're putting in, the quicker you're going to progress. That's really the basics of it. You know, if you're putting in an hour a day of practice, you're really going to make a lot of progress. If you're putting in like 1 hour a week, well, your progress is going to be a little slower. So the more hours you can put in, you know, the practice, the fun, the drawing, all that, you're going to go quicker with your progress, and your paintings are going to look better and your drawings are going to look better over time. But let's stay focused here on the video and on the tutorial here. So what I'm thinking is just, it's going to be basically a square composition. So our watercolor paper is going to kind of have a more of a square look to it. And then we're going to try to keep our some real basic things we're going to keep in mind when we do our composition is maybe about halfway across, which is okay. Halfway, we're going to have a couple awnings. So we're going to do kind of like a street scene here. A couple of awnings here, like that. So one will trail out of the picture frame. The other one might be there. And then we're going to do some figures. So we'll have some figures here. We'll do a few figures. And again, this is the Extreme Beginner series. So we might have someone with a hat here and a little bit larger of a figure here, maybe. So over here, the figure is larger. And then these figures are maybe more in the distance. And there's maybe another figure over here. The heads will all be at the same height, like that, for our figures. And we'll have one walking across the street here. This figure might be a little bit closer, and then this one's very close to the foreground here. So we'll have like maybe 3 figures. And, you know, we can do maybe a female figure here, a male figure with a hat here, and then maybe another male or female figure over here. And that's really going to be the real basic nuts and bolts of the painting. So this might be where the street level is here, like that. And then this might be like the storefronts where the doors are into the shops. So there's some shops here and like this. These are the doorways into the shops. And then maybe our sunlight's coming from here, so we'll make our light insignia here. So the light's coming from here. So the shadows will be over here. So we'll make some shadows on this side of the awnings, like that. Just so we can kind of start seeing the basic layout of things. And maybe we'll have some windows up here, maybe a couple windows, 2 or 3 windows, just to keep it basic like that. Some shutters on there for the windows. So I'm just going quick to kind of just give a basic layout of what we're going to do. And then maybe there's some brick here, maybe some brick or some stonework for the facade for the building. And since the light's coming this way, there might be some more shadows here along these buildings here. We'll work it out as we go, but this looks like a good sunny. We're going to have some good light effects, the sun coming from here. There might be a little bit of light shading on here. This will be in bright sunlight here. And we'll have some pretty good light on these walls here, and we have our windows. So we'll have our windows here. We might have some darker darks there too for the windows. But just basically using a Sharpie, we can kind of practice or do like a quick run through of what we're going to do on the canvas, on the paper first. And then from that point, we can get in and we'll start doing our pencil drawing. So let's get started on the pencil drawing in just a second. But again, I wanted to kind of just go through the basics of it. So we have the 1, 2, and 3 windows with some shutters here along these windows. And you would probably do about the same, kind of a little bit slower, but you know, you don't want to take too much time doing too much detail with your watercolors. You want to get things in expeditiously with fun, have a good time, get a rhythm going with your painting, and move at a good pace, your own pace, whatever pace you would like to work at. And then again, here we have the awnings, and then the bright sunlight on top of the awnings, and then the shadows underneath, the dark shadows. And then 2 or 3 figures here. And then there'll be maybe some, a little bit of shadowing under the figures here and here. And this figure here is quite large, so it's out of the scene, if you can imagine. So that person, if we're taking a picture with a camera, you can kind of see how we zoomed in with our camera to get a lot of close-up information on our picture here, our design. And then some of the things will get cropped out, like the bottom of this figure is getting cropped out. We're just going to leave the upper torso of this figure with the hat and the head. And this figure here, we're going to be pretty much full, maybe full size figure where you can see the feet in the shadows. And this one here too, the feet in the shadows. This one might be, we might not see that, the shadows in the feet of this figure. We might make this one a little bit closer. So we might not have these shadows here, and we might not see the feet. We might just have the legs here. So maybe the feet will be like here. So we'll try to make it a little bit, the figure's really close here, and then this figure's a little bit further away, and then this one's at the furthest distance over here. And we can push this figure back a little bit over here, maybe more back like this, but we'll adjust those. And that's what's great about doing these preliminary sketches like we did here. One, you get the feel of the light with the shadows under the awnings, the figures, the shadows under the figures, maybe some of the darks in the windows, the darks in the windows. And the second thing we can do is once we do this quick first try here with our just a Sharpie, then you can start saying, oh yeah, I think I'm going to move this figure back a little further this way. So we're going to leave more, the bottom of this figure should be more back this way maybe. Here, like where the feet are, should be about here. This figure might be where the feet might be out of the scene, or maybe we'll put the feet in. And then this one here, just the upper torso of the body, the shoulders and the waist and the hat. So you can kind of see how when you do this quick sketch, you get some more ideas. You kind of work out a few more things you might want to for your composition. But again, this is an Extreme Beginner Series video. So this would be about all you'd want to really do when you're pre-planning and going in there and doing your little bit of prior work to getting in and doing your pencil drawing. You just do maybe maybe like one quick sketch just to kind of get an idea of what you're going to do. And since I'm working from basically imagination, just creating an idea here of some windows and some awnings and some figures, you'll use this maybe as your kind of preliminary warm-up before you start going in and doing your drawing. You'll try this out with some Sharpie marker, or you could do it with paint. You could do it with a watercolor brush and paint on some printer paper. Printer paper is great. Use lots of printer paper for practicing and warming up. And then when you get to your painting, then you're going to use your watercolor paper. And I mentioned that I do use a lot of Fabriano paper. And I'll put the link in the description below if you want to pick up some Fabriano paper. Great paper. And it's, I don't have the cover right offhand right now, but it's called Fabriano Studio Watercolor. And I'll leave the link in the description box below, as well as the paint setup here too. I'll give you the link if you want to buy it on Amazon. It's really quick. You just go to Amazon quick and you can just research it right on Amazon. I'll have the links right there. And then we'll just do a quick little spritz of our paints just to keep those a little bit moist. We're going to get started with the paints in a few minutes. But let's do our drawing first, our pencil drawing. And before we do the pencil drawing, let's just take a quick break. I always like to take breaks. So if you work on doing something like this first, doing a little dry run of your pencil drawing and working out some ideas with light, shadows, and figures and what you're going to do with the design of this, then you're fine. You take a quick break, 10, 15 minutes, whatever you want to do. You can just keep working too if you like to. And then you get your watercolor paper out. And I'm using Fabriano Studio Watercolor paper. And just taped it off with some artist tape or drafting tape. And we'll get started in just a second with the pencil drawing. Okay, so we're going to get started once again. The thing I'm going to do right now is sort of safeguard myself from getting some of this paint smudging onto my paper and my working area. So what I do is I take a little bit of a half of a paper towel like this, and I just put it over the top of the paints like this. Then I can put down my sketch here. So you can kind of see now I have my sketch next to me, and then we have our paper here. So this is a really big help if you can have that preliminary sketch with your Sharpie marker right here. You can kind of like just basically almost transpose it right over to this over here. It's a little bit, tiny bit smaller, but you can kind of see it's almost the same size. Pretty much almost exact same size. So that'll be really good. And that would be just like a little kind of an idea of if you want to do your preliminary some basic ideas with some Sharpie marker first, or a pencil or a pen, whatever you have, on a piece of printer paper. If you make it about the same size as your watercolor paper that you're going to use, then you're really going to have a lot of an easier time of transposing and kind of creating this drawing or this sketch over here right on top of this. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually have a much easier time doing this. So what I'll do is I'll just start kind of making a bit of just a look at this and say, okay, well, let's do the first thing. We know we're going to do our light insignia up here. The light's coming from here. That might be a little bit out of the picture. Let's zoom back a little bit like that. Okay. Hopefully we can see that. Light insignia here. And then we notice that maybe the tops of these awnings are a little bit above halfway. So if we take our watercolor paper and we say, all right, this is the height of the paper here. And if I just do a quick little pencil line around this tape, maybe we can see that a little bit better on camera. Hopefully you can see this on camera pretty well. That's our square border of our tape. And then we said we're a little bit above halfway. So if the canvas is, you can always measure it. If you're just starting out with watercolor and you're an extreme beginner, you're just beginning, you're better off you just do some measurements. So you just say, all right, well, how much is this here? The height of this. And we'll say, well, that height is 9 inches. So 9 inches, so half of 9 inches is 4.5 inches or 4.5 inches. So you'd make a mark over here on the side on the tape, like this over here, 4.5 inches, and that's your halfway point. And then we said we're a little bit above halfway. So maybe go, instead of 4.5, maybe go 3 3/4 of an inch, approximately 3 3/4 of an inch, like that. And then you make a little arrow or a little V on top of that. And then you know that's going to be where you're going to make the tops of the awnings. That might be the only real measurement you have to do for this. So then you can do a light pencil line across the paper like that. And again, if you want to get it perfectly straight, you can also use a ruler and measure it and just say, okay, it's 3 3/4 to the tops of the awnings here. And then you go over here and say 3 3/4, tops of the awnings there. And then you can just put your ruler across it and just draw a really light line, just only visible to you. You wouldn't want to make it too dark. Or you can just kind of do it lightly like this and just kind of get it an approximate. And that'll be the tops of your awnings. And then we kind of see here that one awning over here on the left is starting out just about an inch over from the like that, an inch over. And I can also see that the angle is not that steep like this, and it's not straight. It's about a 45-degree angle, maybe not even a 45, maybe like a 35 or a 40-degree angle. So you can even go like this. Once you have that worked out over here on your preliminary, then you can just take that pencil and just bring it on over here and just say that's what we need there. And you can kind of see that's pretty good. And this one over here, this awning is going to be the same angle. So you would just go like this and say, all right, our next awning is over here. And it's the same angle. So you can just take your pencil, slide it across like that, and kind of just like that. And then these kind of like borders, these lower borders of the awnings, they're pretty much, the line is plumb, like that. Straight up and down, so it's plumb, perfectly plumb, or perfectly vertical. The little ribbon at the bottom of the awnings there. Okay. And we're going to do this again loosely. We're going to have fun. So we have our 2 awnings in. That's a big boost right now. That we're kind of really on a great roll right now. We've got our awnings in. Then we're just going to say, well, let's pencil in our shadow lines like this. Now for our, let's say for the sidewalk area where the doorways are underneath these awnings, those ground areas are about a little bit more than halfway down from this point here, from the bottom. So again, you can kind of do it by eye and kind of guesstimate it, or you can even measure. Measuring's fine too. Since you already have everything measured for your awnings up here in this line here, then you can just basically take your measurements and just say, okay, I have 3 inches approximately. 3 inches down to where the sidewalk is. A 2 and 3/4. So 2 3/4 is about where that sidewalk line is, where the building meets the sidewalk. The edge of the building comes down and meets where the sidewalk is, where the walkway is there. And that looks pretty good. And then we have some more vertical lines here where the doorways are underneath the awnings. So we'll just put that vertical line there. This here is all in shadow here. You could take your shadows and just do some lines. Here, we're going to do the same thing, a vertical line. This is all in shadow. Like that. You can soften things up a little bit and erase a few lines once you're done doing your pencil drawings for your painting. Now we're really in fantastic shape here. The next thing, let's do our figures. So again, we were kind of showing that this figure here, the upper torso of the body, which would be the shoulders down to the waist, is like right over here, right in this lower right-hand corner of the painting, like that. So you can almost do like an apple shape or a round shape. That might work fine for right now, just to get like an apple shape or a sort of like that. We're going to paint this figure right into the side of the painting. And then we're going to do their hat, their head here. And their hat's going to be like this, like that. And then maybe the top of the hat's like this. And then what we're going to do is we said we'd make another figure over here. We're going to keep the figures, the heads at the same height. So if you start over here with this figure first, then you just want to keep that line pretty much the same all the way across. So we could take our ruler like this and say, okay, we're going to keep this level across. So all the heads of these figures are going to be at the same height. The bodies are not going to be the same size, but the heads will be at the same height. And then we're going to say this figure's about here. And then we have one more figure about over here. Like that. So I just made little hash marks where they have to be. And then this figure here, I'll draw the head there. And maybe this head's going to be even smaller. So these heads get smaller as they go across. So you have a larger head here with a hat. And the body, like an apple, right in the corner, very large. Then as we go across to the left, this figure here that's right about where the edge of the awning is. Again, doesn't have to be exact. It can be right around the same idea. Basically, we're going to do like a carrot shape, like that. And that might be where we have some shadow under here too. Except the light's coming from this direction. So we'll make the shadows coming this way. Like that for that figure. And then over here, this figure is even smaller. But again, notice that I do have all the heads, the tops of the heads of all these figures straight across the same height, at the same level across the whole painting. Once you get the head size, which is large, medium, and small, then it works out good. You'll see how we have the smaller head here. This is, again, we'll do a carrot shape. This figure, carrot shape here. And you can see there's plenty of the shadows over here, like that. So we just have the basic shapes of the 3 figures coming across here. We're really doing a fantastic job already. Now let's do our windows and we'll be all complete. So let's notice that the windows here are pretty much halfway in between the top of the painting and these awnings. So we can just basically rough these in. We don't have to be exact. Maybe we go up an inch here and we come down about an inch here, and that will be, again, you can do the same thing. If once you say to yourself, well, I'm going to make it an inch above here, this window, and an inch down from the top here, that'll be the height of these windows. Well, then you can just go across and draw a light pencil line all the way across the page, like so. And then another light pencil line across the page for the bottom of this window, and go right across the page. Light pencil line so that you can only see it. Here I try to go a little darker so you might be able to see it, but I think you can follow that along. You just want to kind of keep your windows not from going downhill like this or uphill. You want to keep them at the same straight level across the picture. And then once you have that in, then you can just kind of, you might say to yourself, wow, I just noticed something. As I'm doing this, I'm noticing myself that I'm making the windows a little bit too large. I think they should be maybe a little smaller. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should leave them the way. I'll leave them the way they are. These will be really tall windows. Actually, they're going to be doors. These are going to be doors, walkout Juliet balconies where you can walk out of the doors here. So they're like small doors on each of these here. So I'm just going to do a door, each one here. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to make 3 of them. Like this. Okay. And then each one is going to have some railings. Some Juliet railings here. And I just do some quick you could take your time a little more with this, or you can do them like this, kind of haphazard. That sometimes looks better if you just kind of go in quick and just get those lines in fast for your railings on your Juliet balconies. And then these balconies have shutters, so let's put the shutters in over the doors. So the doors are shuttered, and let's do that. Just make some lines. We'll do those with the brush later, but just so you remember to put those lines in. So that's just to give you the idea that when you come back and you're doing your painting, you're going to remember you're going to put these small, very, very fine lines for the shutters in these areas of these doors, these Juliet balconies. And I think that should be fine. We have, I think, all the main elements of our drawing done. Okay, so the thing I wanted to mention too, let's get a little bit of a shadow under here. Under these Juliet balconies, a little bit of a shadow like that. And again, let's remember, let's have fun with this, enjoy it. Try this 2-3 times. Don't worry about it. If the first time it doesn't come out great, you're going to try it 2 or 3 more times. Don't worry about it. You'll come back a month from now or 2 months from now and try this painting again, or you might try it right away 2 or 3 times in 1 week. It's up to you. You have to figure out your schedule, how much time you can put into your work, your paintings, your compositions. It's all up to you. What I am doing now is, again, trying to take what we did first for our sketch and then just sort of transpose it onto our paper and draw it with pencil now, like this, so that we can paint over it. We don't want to put magic marker on our watercolor paper necessarily. You could do that, though, too. That's up to you if you want to kind of have some fun with some different techniques with using maybe ink. You can use ink. We'll do an ink and wash like this in a video coming up soon. We'll do an ink and wash style painting just like this. But for right now, let's use our standard pencil drawings first. And then we'll come in. Right now, we'll just take a quick break, 5-10 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll start our washes. So we'll get our palette ready to go and start painting. All right, we'll be right back. All right, so we're going to get painting right now. Thing is, I hope you can use this. This might be really helpful. I know sometimes many of you do mention that it's difficult to see the pencil lines on my drawings. So you can use this actually as your guide to what your pencil drawing is going to kind of look like. So you're just going to have the same angles for the awnings, the same locations for the Juliet balconies with doors and shutters. Here I made them windows. Then I changed it, so you always have the ability to change your design as you're going for your paintings and your drawings. You could see I have my 3 figures, a large figure here in the foreground, and then this one is a middle distance figure, and then a little bit further back here is our 3rd figure, a little bit over here, further back in the painting, to give us a little bit of a feeling of 3-dimensional quality. So you kind of see the shadows too, the dark shadows here, as we kind of sketch them in with our magic marker, our Sharpie marker. So again, this I think will give you a really good, so you can always hit pause right now. You can hit pause right now, actually. As I hold this here, you can hit pause and sketch from that, if you'd like, onto your paper. And then you're fine. Now we're ready to paint. And this is the fun part. The painting is the really, really enjoyable part of this. So we're going to use the glazing technique. So basically, I like to just kind of cover, I'll just jot it down here. We'll use the glazing technique. Incidentally, I cover this in detail in my new book. I'm hoping you'll pick up my new book. It's a great book. Actually, it's really kind of made for everyone here that's on my YouTube channel to work from, because basically it's called Watercolor, Methods for Success. It's basically covering 2 methods that I use all the time, the glazing technique and the alla prima technique, the 2 techniques I use all the time when I'm doing my paintings. And in this book, you'll have tons of subject matter to work from. You can work with all of these paintings, and I cover what I'm using in each one, whether it's alla prima or if it's the glazing technique. So I'll have a link in the description below, in the box below in the video. I'll have a link for my new watercolor book, and you'll see that it's got really like tons of paintings you can work from, even flowers and still life and bottles and wine bottles and all kinds of great stuff. I cover all my palettes and all basics of what we're doing here with tonal values, the darks and the lights, like we covered here in this sketch. So I hope you'll use this as a user's manual for watercolor, because that's really what it is. It's a user's manual for watercolor. And once you pick it up and you start going through it, you just paint and draw from each of these paintings that are in here, and you keep working on that, and before you know it, you'll have both the glazing technique and the alla prima technique down pat. So this is again the glazing technique we're going to use right now, and we're going to just basically cover the whole paper with our first glazing, our first wash with color, let it dry 100%, and then we go back in and we'll get our darks, which are underneath the awnings. Some of the figures have some darks. The details are in the darker tonal values, so we're talking about tonal values here. That's the light and dark of what you're seeing. So we'll kind of cover that as we go here. But we're ready to start painting, so I have some fresh, clean water in my Holbein water container, and I have a couple brushes. Maybe I'll put a link in the description below too for my watercolor brushes. I use the Princeton Art and Brush Company 6-brush set, which comes with round brushes and square brushes like this. And I also use a Simply Simmons number 9 round brush. These are all synthetic brushes, which are great when you're first starting out. So if you can just remember that, use synthetics when you first start out in watercolor for your first maybe year or two, and then you can bump up and get some more higher quality watercolor brushes that have natural hairs. Natural hairs are a little more challenging to work with because they hold a lot of water. So you might sometimes tend to flood out your papers if you have the really good higher quality brushes. So you're actually much better buying the synthetic brushes when you first start. And then maybe after a year, when you're kind of more used to watercolor, then you can get the fancier brushes. So these here are the 2 flat brushes I have. These are again from, I'll leave a link down below for the Princeton Art and Brush Company brushes. And what we're going to do is just take fresh, clean water and just cover with a light bit of water this paper, just like this. So this is the glazing technique. We're going to do a lighter wash on the first go. And then after that, we let that dry 100%. And then we go over with our darker washes, our darker details, so to speak. So here we go. We dampen up the whole paper, not flooding the whole paper with water, but just dampening it with some fresh, clean water. That's all you do. You dampen the paper, fresh, clean water with a nice, good size flat brush here. You can kind of see that's a good size brush. You wouldn't want to try doing that with a brush like this, trying to wet the whole paper with a small brush like this. Brush size is actually very critical. When you have a large sheet of paper like this, you want to use a really good sized brush like this or larger with your fresh, clean water to get the whole paper nice and damp with fresh, clean water, and then you'll be ready to put on your washes. So now that we have everything all damp, wet, we're good, then we mix up our paint. Now this painting, we're going to do kind of a warmer feel to it. So let's go with some orange, maybe some brown up here too. Let's use brown. I'll try to give myself lots of space to work in here. So we'll use some brown paint, some orange. We're going to use some cool too. We'll use a little bit of blue down here. We're going to want to mix warm and cool everywhere. We don't want to just have one color. So I'll use some of that blue here, which is kind of like a cerulean blue. Like that. Kind of like a turquoisey blue. There we go. So now we have our cooler color here, turquoisey blue, like that. And then we have our orange and our brown up here. And maybe a little bit of yellow too. We're going to make this kind of like a warm, sunny afternoon feel with that orangey yellow. Kind of like an orangey yellow, yellow ochre kind of color. And we're just going to cover the whole paper with that, with a light wash. Here we go. Look how fun that is. Isn't this fun? We're just doing that light wash, so there's nothing, we're not going to have a problem with anything here. It's just getting on this light wash. We start up at the top of the paper with our first glazing, the glazing technique again. We get that mix we mixed and just get it on. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can go with a little more yellow, a little more orange to mix up a little more if you're going and you're kind of, I might make some of the brush strokes on an angle, the way the light's coming, like this, across. And I'll just do the whole painting with this light first glazing. Now we could go in and add a little bit of some where the shadows are. You could go in with a little bit of a darker, but you have to do it fast now. That's why I say a lot of times with watercolor you have to work kind of quickly. I paint around this figure a little bit, but I just wanted to get in a little bit of a darker wash here. Maybe a little bit of darker tones right there. Maybe a little bit there too. But really, adding these little bit of brown, darker tones, that's going over the top. You don't really need to do that, especially if you're just starting out. Just get that yellowy orange glow on the whole painting and let that be, and that'll be fine. If you've been painting for a while, maybe with me, and you're an extreme beginner and you've been painting a year, and you say, yeah, Chris, I'm going to go for it here. I'm going to do a little extra washes here and add in some extra things. That's fine too. And you can always take a bit of a paper towel or a tissue, and you can also lift up a little bit for your figures if you wanted to. Just blot up a little bit for your figures. If you wanted to leave a little more light on your figures, you could just, again, blot up with a tissue or a paper towel. Very lightly, though. You don't want to make it a big deal or really over-accentuate what you're doing. You want to very subtly get in there and do a little bit of lifting of maybe some of the darker washes you just put on. But I wouldn't do a lot more. You might lift up a little bit here, too, on these awnings. Bright sunlight on the awnings, that might be the area you might lift up a little bit of paint. Carefully. What I mean by carefully is trying to do it subtly so no one notices that you lifted up some of the paint with your tissue there. And the same thing with the figures. Try to do it very subtly if you can. Or you could just leave it and not worry about lifting up anything with your tissue. But that's a great technique to have, is to take the tissue and roll it up and blot it up and practice doing a little bit of lifting of wash when you do your first glazing. That's going to give us a little more light. Also on the sidewalks here on this scene, a little more light on the sidewalks might look good, might really look good. So you could do that too. But just very subtly, again, you're not really trying to do anything too extreme. Just a little bit of lifting with a tissue in a few areas to get a little more bright white paper there. And then you're going to see a little bit of a better feeling of light when you're doing your darker washes over the top. But right now we're good to go. Can you believe it? We've got pretty much, wow, we're cooking here. We got all that first glazing done, and now it's just a fun time. We wait till this dries. You can use a blow dryer if you want to dry it off and get back to working within 5 minutes if you're using a blow dryer, or you can let it dry naturally for like an hour or two. It's up to you, or the next day. You might get this part done today, and then the next day you come back and you'll do your darks over the top of this. You do it the way you want to do it. You're the artist. You do things the way you want to do it. You have free, total freedom with your artwork to do any of your paintings any way you want to. All I'm doing is giving you sort of a general idea of what I'm doing, and then you can take it to your own level and how you want to custom tailor your paintings and create the look you want, the desired effect you want. Okay? All right, so great. Let's come back, and I'm going to use the blow dryer and blow dry this off, and I'll come back in like 5-10 minutes, and we'll start doing the second glazing, or the final glazing, basically the darker darks over the top. Okay, be right back. All right, we use the blow dryer. Some of you might have let yours dry naturally. I used the blow dryer. Got a really good result here. The paper is almost flat again, so when I added that first glazing, and you'll notice when you do your first glazing, keep that in mind, your paper's going to really buckle a lot because you're dampening your whole paper quite a bit and soaking that paper, and then you're going over with that really light glazing, that first glazing of wash of the orange and the browns, a little bit of yellow, get that golden kind of warm feeling across your whole paper. But you will notice that the paper is going to be buckled and look like it's got hills and valleys everywhere, and that's where you have to either let it dry for a couple hours or more, or you use the blow dryer and you get it back so that it's really dry. You can touch it. There's no wetness or dampness to it, and it actually is much more flat again. So if you have your paper taped down, and I forgot to mention that, if you're doing the glazing technique like we're doing here, you really want to tape down your paper that you're working on really, really well on your table, whatever you're working on, whether it's a masonite board or some other type of board you might use, or if you're using gummed blocks, those are perfect for glazing techniques. So if you do have gummed blocks that you purchased with watercolor paper, those are perfect. You can just wet those. You don't need any tape on them, really. You just wet them all. The paper can buckle, and then once it dries with either a blow dryer or natural time, just over a couple hours, 2-3 hours, your gummed block will go back to a flat watercolor paper situation again once everything is dry. So you always remember that. That's how you tell your paper is dry, to go back in and start painting again on your second glazing over the top of your first, is that your paper is going to be pretty much flat. It won't be perfectly flat, but it'll be pretty even. Whereas when your paper's damp and wet, you'll notice it's got all kinds of buckles, and that you can't go back and paint on top of that. That'll ruin the painting. So let's again look at this just one more time. This is going to give us our clues as to where our dark shadows are going to be underneath the awnings. Maybe some of the dark shadows are going to be in our Juliet doors up here, walkout doors here. Or you could make them windows if you want to make windows up top here. Feel free to make windows. It's up to you. And the figures, too. Mostly the figures will be lighter in color with some colors. We'll make some interesting colors for the garments for the figures. But mostly we're really prepped and ready to start painting now our second glazing. So the first thing I like to do is take a paper towel, and I like to just blot up any big puddles in the palette. I even just like to clean the palette like that. We're going to use the same colors now, but I didn't want to have any puddles in this because we're using darker colors now. And that means we're not going to use hardly any water. We're going to use mostly just paint with a little bit of a damp brush. What I'd like to do is get some of these shadow patterns in. But before I do that, I will take a little bit of Cool Wash. So I'll take my same brush that I used for the first wash, the first glazing we used, the same brush. I'm going to take the same brush and then, again, use some of that blue. Just a little bit of that blue. It's like a cerulean blue. Maybe a touch of orange. So I have two kind of... And I just might want to do maybe a touch of some very light couple of cooler washes like that, and then I dampen the brush again, and then just maybe and then I can even take a tissue and I just wanted to get a little bit of that blue on there. You can skip this step. Actually, I would skip this step. Don't even bother doing this. I wouldn't even do it. I'm just trying to experiment a little bit. I always experiment when I'm painting, actually, and I hope you'll do that too. As an artist, watercolor artist, you're going to want to try to experiment when you're doing your paintings too as well. So don't feel afraid to experiment and try different things when you're working. Again, it's a lot of, if you can just view your painting really as practice all the time, you're really going to feel better. I know sometimes we always want to think, oh, this is going to be a painting and a finished painting, and they will turn out great. You're going to do some great paintings, and I'm sure you've done some great paintings already. And I've seen a lot of some great paintings everyone's doing. They're sending me in your emails and showing me what you're doing out there, and I'm really highly excited and impressed with how everyone's doing such a great job. But also, too, push the boundaries for yourself, too, as a watercolor artist. You know, try new methods and techniques, your own. Sometimes your best breakthrough moments are when you create something on your own, some kind of new idea you try out. Instead of maybe using mine, sometimes you come up with your own ideas, too, as well as mine, and you'll find that, wow, it really worked out great, and you've come up with a new idea that maybe no one else is using. So all I'm saying is experimentation is really good, and I tried it here, and it's okay. I added a little bit of blue, a little bit of that cerulean type blue onto this, the wall here, this wall in this scene here on this building, and it looks all right. So now let's get our round brush. I'll use my Simply Simmons number 9, and I'll get some darker darks. So I'm going to use the same orange, brown. We'll use some of that blue. And I probably will use a darker blue, like this up here. Like that. And maybe even some purple up here. So I've just made myself a range of interesting color. Orange, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange. For some darks, and then some blue up here. And then some darker blue up here with some purple. Like that, and then maybe a little bit of brown just to tone that down a little bit. And I think we have some good darks there. And let's get some of the darks going now. So let's start out with, we'll start out at the top. We're going to do some darks up here. on the underside of this Juliet doorway here. Like that. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit of darks shadowing under there. Like that. Then a little more shadowing under here too. We'll do a little, I wouldn't get too fancy or take too much time. I just want to do a little bit of a shadow under there, like so. Like that. And then here, let's do some shadowing on the sides of these awnings. Like we said, we would have some shadowing under there. Warm and cool, so I'm going to go with some of those purples, blues, and the darkest dark of those shadows are blue and brown, like that under there, and the same thing here. So now we're just doing some of those darker shadows. And I think they're going to go right down to the ground area, like so. And I'm painting around my figure, like that. And we're going to go on the side of the awning, like so, and go straight down, like that. I'm going around my figure there. Same thing there. So you definitely are moving along here. I would say if you can try to mix your, I haven't mixed up enough of the darks to start with. So to make life easy for yourself, mix up more darks for your shadows. I'm mixing them up as I go now. Try to mix yours ahead of time, and then this way you can just get everything done at one time. Does that make sense? Like you can see how I'm sort of like scrambling around right now on my painting, trying to mix up darks while I'm doing my shadows. They all want to, like we want to keep our shadows all kind of flowing all the same, like this. Like this. And around this figure. And a little bit over here. Like that. Okay, and that's the dark shadow along the sidewalk there. And then there's lights coming this way, so we will see a shadow there and over here. And you see, I'm not getting too fussy over here. Like I'm doing these quickly. I'm not really taking too much time. I think watercolor looks good if you can kind of move at a good pace, or a decent pace anyway. So there we go. And what else do we have? A little bit of a lighter wash here. I wouldn't do anything. All right, this is pretty good right now. So you can kind of see. We're doing pretty well. And then we can get like a more finer brush here. Let's use our needlepoint brush. We should always have our needlepoint brush when we're working. And this can get us the fine details. So we're going to do the, let's do the, these are the shutters on the doors for the Juliet balcony. And I think if we just get a couple lines going here and there, not everywhere, you can kind of see we're doing shutters here. Pick up some more paint. I'm making sure I don't lean in my paint down here. And loose is better. If you can do it loosely and fun and kind of with a rhythm, you're going to have a better looking painting. If you're trying to go really too accurately, sometimes that can really kind of just make things look kind of like too rigid. You know, so look at how I'm just going kind of quickly. We're doing the railings now. I'm firing them in quickly. Like this. Takes time to do it this way. You can practice on your printer paper first, doing railings and details with your needlepoint brush. You know, you practice on these type things first, like on your printer paper. And then when you get into your painting, yeah, then it's a lot easier, because you've already practiced it a number of times and it just kind of flows a lot easier. If you're trying to do this for the first time, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So if you can try to practice up first a little bit here and there on your printer paper with your needlepoint brush or any other brush, your flat brush, to do any kind of other brush strokes you might want to practice. I do a lot of videos. You could always type in Chris Petrie swatches or brush stroke practice and things like that. And even in my new book, I have all kinds of exercises you can work on with your brush techniques. Okay, so now we have I'm going to splash some very little tiny bits of paint with my needlepoint brush. That's going to give this the look of stucco on the walls, like that cement, those cement walls. And I will do a little more too. I will add a little bit of, maybe I'll do a little bit of this. Get a little bit of paint from the paint pan, from the palette. Take a little bit from the palette and do a couple little, get a little texture on the walls like this. Okay. Looking good. All right, so let's get one more. This here, I should do a little bit of a line here. Like that. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just trying to get that line like that there. All right, so we're going to get ready to do our figures next. And I'm adding a little bit of blue up here with my needlepoint brush too. I just add a little bit of blue to some of these shadows under here. So you can kind of like add some color with your needlepoint brush if you want. You can shift back over to the round brush. So we have some warm and cool colors, a little bit of cool blue there too. You can go back in and mix a little more darks, blue and brown. So that dark blue, like that navy blue or that French ultramarine blue, and the brown and the blues. Gets you the good dark, and then you can add a little more dark up here. That looks good if you can get that little extra rich dark there up top. And a little bit there too. And a little bit there. So it's just a matter of adding some of those darks in strategically, like that. Okay. I'll add a little bit of a darker, just a very, very light wash here. And what that does is just give it a little bit of and that accentuates where the awning the front of the awning, where that little ribbon is around the bottom of the awning, where it kind of goes straight down. You kind of see that a little more, which looks good. So you get a little bit of a light wash, not dark, pretty light right here across this section there. Just to give yourself that little bit of the difference between the light striking the tops of the awnings here, and then you have that little bit of shadowing along these parts of the awnings here. And then you have the darks underneath the shadow, underneath the awnings there, which looks great. Okay, so we're going to work on the figures next. I'm hoping you'll subscribe. Have you subscribed yet? Oh my gosh, you can't miss anything here. We have a great channel here. We've been working on YouTube for over 5 years or more. We have lots of people coming here all the time. Everyone's having really good results. No reason why you can't have good results with your watercolors. Maybe it's your very first time ever being here on my channel. Welcome, and I'm thanking you so much for coming by. And you're at the right place at the right time. We cover all the fundamentals of watercolor here, so you're not going to basically be lost for any kind of information. I'm covering the same information over and over and over again, and that's what's going to kind of help you to learn watercolor. So you'll notice a lot of people in the comment section on my channel are really saying a lot of good things, and they're saying that they are getting really good results. And I have many people emailing me their pictures of their watercolor paintings, and they're looking absolutely fantastic. So there's no reason why you cannot get a great start with watercolor if you're just starting out for the first time, or even if you've been here for 6 months or even a year. I'm sure you're making good progress. So let's stick together, keep learning week after week, month after month, and year after year. We're going to keep working here on my channel so that we can all get better and improve on our skills. And I'm no different. I'm with you. I'm learning more and more as I paint along with you. We're all together getting better with our artwork, our watercolor painting. Okay, so let's enjoy the journey of watercolor, and let's come back and we'll finish up this painting. We're just going to put in our figures quickly, and we'll have a finished painting. You'll see how great this looks once we peel off the tape and kind of look at it as just a beautiful composition that we've worked on, and we've kind of hit on all the details we need to, the basic details that are going to get us painting good-looking paintings, okay? And if you haven't subscribed, again, please don't miss a thing. Right-hand side below, you'll see the little subscribe button. You click on that, and then you're all set. Then you won't miss anything. YouTube will just let you know the next time when you go onto YouTube. You'll just notice that we have our videos up. You'll see my video, and YouTube will let you know that we're creating a new video as we go. Nothing else. You won't get any text messages or phone calls or any silly stuff like that or emails. It's just YouTube's way of saying, if you like my channel, if you do subscribe, you're just going to be notified when I create a new video on YouTube, okay? So hope you'll subscribe, stay in touch with us here, and we're just going to keep working and getting better and better and better. Be right back. All right, so let's get our figures in and we'll be all set. So the first figure we'll work on, let's work on this figure over here, which is on the right-hand side. It's the largest figure. And again, I'm just going to try to come up with some ideas here. I'm thinking let's have a shadow underneath the top of the hat here. And maybe we'll make let's make a reddish-orange shirt for our first figure. So I'll get some red and orange, mix up a reddish-orange color, and I'll use some of the blues too up here to kind of modulate the color so that we have a little bit of a... And we're going to do nothing too fancy here. We'll get some darker darks there. So we're going to leave it, we're going to leave this figure lighter up top by the shoulders and then darker down here. So we're going to make, again, the bottom area darker, down here darker, and we leave up top here by the shoulders lighter. I'll rinse off my brush in the water container, dry off a little bit of the water on a tissue, and I'll just blend in that paint like that. I'm going to blend that figure right out into the side of the... And again, I'll dry off some of that water and have a damp brush and just like that. Okay, and then a little more shadow back here. Especially over here, we're going to have a shadow across the back of the hat. Okay, that's our figure's hat. I kind of just blend in some of those edges like that. Looks good. Then let's have maybe some blue. Let's do a blue shirt over here. So let's have a blue shirt. And notice I'm not making the colors too incredibly vibrant. I want to mix in some reds and browns, kind of make some things grayish looking. I don't want to have too much. And then maybe some darker pants here, dark blue. So the dark blue right here, dark blue, brown. Make a nice dark. We'll have some darker pants here for this figure. And then the shadow goes this way. Because remember we were saying the light comes this way, so all the shadows under the windows, the doors here, the Juliet balconies, the shadows over on the left side over here of the awnings, because the light's coming from this direction across in the scene. So the same thing with our figures. You're going to see that light going this way, and the shadows are going to be on the left side of the figures over here. And we're hoping that we captured that when we were doing our preliminary sketch too. So then now I'm going to make a more of a reddish, orangey face here. Okay, that's our figure. That's the figure's face. So we have a head and kind of a reddish face for good skin tones, and maybe some hands over here. Okay. And again, we started out with a carrot shape for our drawings. And then we're going to make these darks over here. Okay, I just wanted to fill in that area here with a little bit of the darks. Like that. And then our final figure over here. Let's do the same thing. Let's maybe do something, let's do a red shirt over here. I don't think we did red yet. Let's do a red shirt here. That looks good. Kind of a little sparkle of color in our painting. Looks good. And then maybe some lighter grayish pants here. Maybe some blue jeans. Okay. And then we, again, carrot shape with a round, kind of an oval for the face. Shadows for the feet and the body, so we want to have that shadow there. And then we blend that figure right into the shadows in that doorway there. Okay. And maybe we'll do the same thing too. We'll get some of that flesh tone like that. All right, so you can kind of see we have our three figures. We didn't go too much detail, just kind of we kept it that carrot shape when we did the drawing, and then we just kind of used that same formula of using a carrot shape to kind of shape the body with some legs. You can do some shadowing here, maybe some blue on the left side over here because this is the dark side, like that. Same thing over here. Darker over here, lighter on the right side because the light's coming from this way. So you can kind of take that idea and run with it. You want to keep your shadows on the left and the light on the right. You could add in a little bit of detail, some brown and dark blue. Maybe this figure here has a briefcase here or a bag like that. Maybe this person here has some shopping bag like that. I'll blend this side over here in shadow. And what we'll do is maybe on our final bit of detail, we'll add a little bit of white paint to just maybe add a detail or two. So, but what I want to do is I want to make sure all these figures are dry. So let these figures dry. Again, the same thing as when you're doing the first glazing. When you're doing your second glazing and doing your final figures, let these all dry before you go in and do your absolute final details. So now what we're going to do is let everything dry once again. Use your blow dryer if you have a blow dryer. Use that, dry everything off, and then in your final touch-ups, right when you're at the very, very final portion of your painting, everything has to be dry again. Same thing, 100% dry, everything. Then you can go in, we'll do our final touch-ups to this, and you'll see how we can do a few little bits of light on our figures, and it's just going to look fantastic. You'll see how it just really pops and looks great. And then we'll be on to our next painting soon. But before that, let's get this one completed, and then we'll see how it looks. All right, our final details. This is what we always enjoy the most when we're kind of finishing up. I'll just take my palette, clean up my palette just a little bit. Always good to do this when you're painting. Maybe you're going to do this several times during your painting. Probably always a good idea to keep your palette clean. If you're using a lot of colors, every once in a while you take a break and you wipe up the colors with a little bit of a damp paper towel with some water, and then you're ready to kind of get back and do some more washes, and things will look a little bit better if we're not leaving our palette with too many colors in there. But in any case, now we're to the final details. We're just going to do a few. Let's take a fresh clean water. So I emptied my water bucket. And since the water bucket's empty, I put some fresh clean water in there. Dry off my brush a little bit on a paper towel so that I just have a damp brush, not too much water in there. Then I take some titanium white. This is a Holbein titanium white. You can use either this or Winsor & Newton titanium white paint. And what you do is you just add a little bit of orange paint to the very, very top of the paint in here. If you can see that, I'm kind of adding a little bit of orange paint to that. And what that does is it warms up that white color just a little bit, because titanium white's like really stark white. Doesn't have much tint in it at all, any color. So If you add a little bit of that orange in there, warms it up. Okay, and then you take that, and then you take the tissue, you dry off a little bit of that paint. You don't want too much on there when you do some details, but then we're just going to do some quick, some light on top of these figures. So a little bit of light on top of that figure over here on their shoulders. A little more there, like that, and then I get a little more paint. I get a little more paint there, like this. This just looks great. And what you do is you only do a little bit, not too much. Just a tiny bit. Like that. Just a little bit of highlight, maybe a little bit of highlight here. And maybe a highlight there. So I'll just take a little bit of highlight there. Like that. And again, a little bit there, a little bit here. And that just really beautifully, it just pops out the light on top of these figures. And then if you notice, the light is coming from the right-hand side, so maybe there's not much light over here on the left. But there's definitely light on the right side. And then you could go back in, get a little bit of red and orange. Just a little more for the flesh tones for the face, maybe. And it would be a little bit lighter on this side. And then a little bit darker on the left side. Like that. So you always want to think of light and dark. Light's coming from this side, so you have your more darker red on the left side of the face, and then a little bit lighter red on the right side. And the same thing over here. So now we've pretty much completed everything. I think this is fine. We've gotten to the end result that we wanted to. We wanted to capture really good light in this painting. We also wanted to create good design. So we captured the design we wanted to, which was the awnings, the windows, or these Juliet doors or Juliet windows. And then we also wanted to do some really simplified figures. 3 figures, going back, recessing into the painting, 3-dimensional quality. We said that all the heads were at the same level, so if we took a ruler or a straight edge, we'll see that all of the tops of the figures of the heads are all pretty much at the same level. And there's just they shrink down smaller and smaller from the bottom up like that. So, and they get a little smaller. So each of the figures gets smaller and diminished. But we did, again, say we wanted the heads at the tops all to be at the same height, and that gives you a good perspective as if you're walking in this scene, walking into the scene, or walking along these sidewalks and street level in this street scene. It really does add a lot of 3-dimensional quality and realism to it. It looks really good. It's fine. You could also go in and do some more details if you wanted to. It's up to you. Like here, we could also maybe put a couple, maybe a cafe here, like that. Cafe, deli, like that. Then here we could put also, maybe this is a cafe too, cafe. You could put a couple quick details in there just to kind of give it a little more interesting look. You could add a little bit of color, maybe a couple bits of so if I added some of that color there, I might just scrub in a little bit of that blue too. Put a put a little bit of the blue here. Maybe we add a little blue too. Cool, warm and cool, like that. Then we take a damp brush. We just rinse off the brush, clean water, dry off the brush a little bit, and then we can just sort of smooth those out a little bit, those brush strokes that we just put in. And then we also can do a little bit of blotting. And that gives us a little bit of warm and cool color up here. And we have plenty of warm and cool colors down here for our figures and inside of our shadows of our awnings here, our street scene. We could also do maybe a few more details. I mean, we could put a door in over here maybe. Just a quick rendition of something like this. There might be a door over here. You know, you could put in a couple more details if you wanted to. Like that. And then you could even go back and get some of the darks again. Put a little bit of dark in there, like so, underneath there for a shadow. Same thing on this side here, a little bit of a shadow there. So you could add in some extra bits of details if you want. You could put in a door. Like that. You could put in a sometimes too, if you want to get a little bit of light, you could also do this. This is a fun thing I sometimes try out. You take a fresh, clean tissue, right? And then you can also take like a ruler. You could take a ruler and then you take the ruler and you fold. You take the tissue, you fold the ruler over the edge of the ruler like so. And then you can also get a really nice highlight on your door here if you wanted to just add a quick highlight. It doesn't always work out 100%, but if you don't want to take a chance and do something like that, not a big deal. Once this dries 100%, you can go back in and grab a little bit of that white, titanium white, and you can just do a little bit of you can go across your doorway there with a transom. So you have a transom window with a door over here. So you can do that too as well, and you can have some ornamentation here, maybe a doorknob or a door like that. But it's up to you if you want to add a few more details, but I wouldn't go with too many details because then what happens is the painting kind of gets like bogged down with just too much detail, and then it kind of loses its like looseness and the fun look that it has. So let's keep it just a few more ideas of maybe a doorway over here in the middle. If you want to. If not, don't worry about it. But I think that's enough. And then we could just do a quick simple. We can just peel off our tape. And you can automatically see how good it looks with the tape peeled. It actually highlights the beautiful warm tones that we created. The warm colors. Like that. So I want to thank you for joining along. We'll be back before you know it to do more watercolor, paintings, compositions, practicing. We do everything here on my channel. We do seascapes, landscapes, cityscapes, figure painting. We do still life paintings, flower paintings, everything watercolor. So I'm glad you're joining along. And before you know it, we're going to be doing your favorite subject matter. So maybe street scenes are not your favorite, but that's okay because we're going to do flowers soon and do still life soon. Maybe even do, figures, seascapes, We do it all here. Thank you for joining along, and we'll be back before you know it. Okay? See you soon. Bye-bye.